Well, I believe that how adoptions are handled that's very important. However, I don't think it doesn't change that primal wound. If the mother who gave birth to the baby is not going to be the mother that takes care of the baby's going to have that wound. Now, how the new mother handles the situation is very important, because one of the things that babies don't know is self-regulation. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. And part of how moms help them with this is what we call attunement. Moms are tuned into their babies and they know what's going on and they soothe their babies. And once they soothe her 10,000 times, the baby can begin to soothe themselves. But if the mother is totally unaware of what the baby is experiencing and can't really soothe the baby in the way the baby needs to be soothed, then that feeling, that yearning, that emptiness is always going to be there, and the feeling that no one gets it, no one understands. And it's so important for new adoptive mothers to be tuned into the fact that their baby really wants the first mother and that she needs to acknowledge that to the baby. And if she can do that and empathize with the baby's loss, there can be a so much better response to her by that baby. Because when I talk to adoptees who feel closest to their adoptive parents, they're the ones who feel their adoptive parents tried to understand their feelings and validate their feelings. Because you're not going to have the same kind of bonding with an adoptive mother as you have with a biological mother. For one thing, there's an interruption in the bonding and the child is not going to trust it. But the other thing is that part of bonding is physical and biological and connected, genetically connectedness, So there's going to be a different kind of bonding. And the way that the adoptive mother can bond with her child the best is to be able to tune in to what the baby is experiencing and soothe the baby when that is going on. One of the things I discovered after giving birth to my second child was that I had a very real understanding of what it must have been like for my daughter to be separated from her birth mother and for her birth mother to be separated from her. It just seemed like a tremendous, tremendous loss.
Yeah, it is.
Take 5.
You okay? You want your water?
Yeah.
So it's amazing how long and deep this goes. Because here we're talking,
Oh, I know
20
it.
some, 25, how long? 30 years, I don't know how old.
32 years.
Okay, wow, that's.
Yeah. But it's universal, it's not, there's not anything that's 32 years old. It's
Right.
as old as time and as young as today, I mean, it's just a very human connection that should never be broken. One of the things that I think we need to distinguish between is personality and behavior, because I think that a lot of adoptive parents have no idea what the personalities of their children are. They see a lot of behavior. Sometimes they see acting out behavior, sometimes they see compliant behavior, and it's sometimes very difficult to get beneath that behavior to the personality of the child, because the personality hasn't been encouraged. And it doesn't mean that the adoptive parents have said, oh, you have to be this way or that way. But when your first thing that happens to you in your life is that your mother disappears, what do all children do when something happens early in their lives? They blame themselves for it. They think, I must have made this happen. I must have made mom and dad get a divorce. So adoptees oftentimes believe that the reason their moms didn't keep them was because something's wrong with them. It isn't a thought. It's more just a very deep belief. And so what they want to do is make sure that they don't let that happen again. And since they didn't do anything as a baby really to make mom go away, it must be who they are. So there's a big reason to try to adapt to that family and not allow anybody to really know who they are. And so part of the thing that happens as far as adoptees are concerned is that what you see is coping behavior. Now, every time there's a trauma, you see coping behavior. You can see coping behavior with a 30-year-old woman who's been raped. She begins to be very distrustful. She doesn't go anywhere. She stays, she's very safe. She stays in a very safe place. She doesn't really get very close to people anymore. And she is very different from the way she may have been 2 years earlier. But she knows she's different. She knows who that person was 2 years earlier, and she can refer to that person she was 2 years earlier as her real self, her authentic self, and that her behavior has changed as a result of what happened to her. Adoptees have this thing happen to them right as soon as they're born, or most of them do. So they don't have any reference point for who they are, for who that person might have been had this trauma not happened. So even they are confused about who they are. They don't know who they are. And when I do some of these workshops on who am I and ask them questions about things they like or things that they believe, a lot of them won't really, it's not that they just don't want to let anybody know, they really don't know themselves. And so they're, first of all, afraid to make a commitment to even what color they like best, but they kind of always take the temperature, you might say, of the surroundings to find out what everybody else is doing or what would be okay to say. What is it that you want me to say? And so who that person is a real mystery sometimes. And I mean, there are certain adoptees, of course, that let more of their personality out than others, or more, they feel more comfortable within their family, so they can do that. But there's a lot of holding back. So the personality development is very much inhibited, I believe, in an adoptive family. However, you have a lot of coping mechanisms, and the coping mechanisms, as I say, is what most people see. Those are the parts of the behaviors and so forth that we see. Behaviors are a form of communication. We are trying to get somebody to understand something, because even with traumas that are involved in people who are older, oftentimes there are no words for those traumas. They don't know how to describe it. They can't really tell you about it very much. People are always saying, well, why didn't she go to somebody right away and talk about her rape? Well, trauma just kind of takes away all the verbal skills. There are a lot of images, there are a lot of sensations that people get as a result of trauma, but the words just don't seem to be there sometimes. And of course, when the trauma happened in a pre-verbal time, it's very difficult for adoptees to tell you exactly what's going on or how they feel. I know that people will say to me, well, how come you wrote this book instead of an adoptee? This is about adoptees. Well, I don't really think an adoptee could have written it, because it has to do with words. They can understand it, they can get it when they read it, but to be able to just put those feelings and sensations into words isn't something that someone who's been traumatized can do very easily. So metaphors might work better, or artwork, that kind of thing. But just to verbalize what it is that happened and how they responded to it and how they felt about it is very difficult. So personality is something that does get set back quite a bit as a result of being in an adoptive family, and it doesn't have anything to do with what people are trying to do in that adoptive family. Now, there are adoptive parents who think their children should be a certain way, and that they should act a certain way, and that they should go into a certain profession, but you find that in biological families too, where there's a great lot of control there as far as how a child should develop. But a lot of families just want the child to be him or herself, but the child is afraid to do that, because as far as they're concerned, that's what got them kicked out of paradise in the first place.